We'll be going through the essays for Tuck School of Business. I am Shreyoshi and I'll be your session host for today. I have here with me Natasha from the Red Pen, and she will be going through this session. And if you have any questions for her, please write them in the Q&A tab, and you can also interact among yourselves on the chat. We will be taking questions in between the sessions and then also at the end. Natasha, over to you.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Tuck is a school where I really enjoy speaking about the school's essays. So, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I hope you find this useful. I'm going to start this session by telling you a little bit about myself. So, my name is Natasha. I head client servicing for MBA admissions at the Red Pen. I've worked on MBA essays for the last 5 years, or more than 5 years. And I typically work with clients who are looking at US schools primarily. I work very extensively with individuals applying to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, as well as European MBA programs as well. One of my passions is working with individuals to really beef their resume and LinkedIn narratives and really create a cohesive strategy about how they want to present themselves to business school. And my real passion is essays. So, without any further ado, what I want to now talk about is Tuck, the philosophies, and what you really need to keep in mind when you're creating your essays for Tuck. Once we do that, we're going to talk about a couple of live essays where I'll give feedback about essay structure, communication, and messaging. So let's understand Tuck, because I think what you need to do before you really sit down to write an essay is understand the philosophy of what a school is all about. Like Shreyashi said, keep typing your questions in the Q&A box, and I'll get to them, during the session, or even at the end of the session. We've kept some time aside for questions as well. So start placing your questions in the box as well. Now, when you talk about Tuck, I think there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. You need to understand that the school is really defined by its community. Tuck is a very close knit community. It is in a location that may not be, a part of a very large city. It is slightly cut off, but that means that bonds, community, and really understanding how you're going to spend your time on campus with your cohort is going to be central to how you understand the experience that you're going to have. Tuck also believes in creating very self-aware leaders who are focused on community and understanding. And when you want to create a very strong pitch for Tuck, you need to understand that the values that are central to you are going to be your ability to demonstrate that you understand why you are motivated by certain causes. You need to be able to connect that to your actions, and you also need to understand your impact on communities, on individuals, as well as how you can work effectively with others to build perspective. Now, the mission of the school is really to develop wise, decisive leaders who better the world through business. So, there is, of course, a broader focus on how you can create impact through a community focused perspective while at Tuck. Now, the reason I've gone into such detail is it will help you understand the admission criteria that the school puts out. So, when Tuck talks about the four pillars of how they evaluate a particular applicant, you need to understand where that really filters down. So, when they talk of smart and accomplished, they really want to understand your academic potential and your ability to have an analytical thought process or a strategic thought process when you refer to anything on the professional side. When you talk about being aware and insightful, you need to be emotional, you need to be vulnerable, and you need to also demonstrate a high degree of self-awareness about your own motivations, as well as how you look at displaying empathy to those around you. When you talk about being encouraging and collaborative, you need to think about how you form connections and how you use those connections not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others, whether those are members that you interact with or whether you use those relationships to create impact for the greater good. When you talk of being nice and engaged, and Tuck really does look at itself as taking in nice people, right? So when you talk about nice and engaged, you really need to demonstrate that your actions are consistently influenced by a sense of purpose that is unique to you. You need to demonstrate that you're an engaged community citizen, that you're aware of the circumstances and the people around you, and you're constantly looking to see the positive ways in which you can help them. These criteria basically promote a very holistic evaluation because they can be seen in different parts of your application, and the essays are really a big part of that. It also demonstrates your fit and your alignment with the school's mission of being really an action oriented leader. And it also talks about how you think about giving a voice or giving a seat at the table to others, which is really about promoting diversity and inclusion. I think with that, what I want to start talking about are the Tux essays, because I think we've now spent a lot of time on understanding the broad context that your essays are going to be evaluated in. I've highlighted the key parts of each essay prompt in red so that you know exactly what you need to address. And my suggestion is when you're building your essays, always highlight the main part of the prompt so that you ensure that you don't miss out on it when you're writing the essay. So the first tuck essay, and what I like is all three essays have an equal word count or an equally distributed word count. So you have enough space. You have like about 900 words to really get yourself across and who you are across to the school. So the first essay is really about why MBA, why now, and why tuck. Okay. So once you have those three elements noted down, it becomes easier for you to build your essay. My suggestion is when you're starting to build your essay, try and answer those questions in the same order. So, why do you need an MBA? Why do you need it at this juncture of your career? And then, you devote the rest of your essay to why tuck. So, the first part of your essay, a good, benchmark would be to have about half of your essay talking about why MBA and why now, and then have another 150 words roughly to talk about why tuck. This will ensure that you're really connecting the dots in a meaningful manner. You need to understand that this particular essay really links to the admissions criteria of aware. Now, aware can be many things, but in the context of this essay, it means that you make intentional choices. You're not reacting to your environment, but you are someone who has an ambition and you make conscious decisions to go in that direction. The other thing that is important to understand over here is they want to understand your vision for the future. And that vision needs to be not only for your own benefit, but also for the kind of impact and the kind of business problems you want to work on in the future. So when you talk about why tuck, the why tuck becomes an integral part of how you start envisioning yourself fulfilling this future dream of yours. You need to be able to talk about really unique resources that Tuck has. And a good benchmark is if you were to substitute the school name with another school name, would it still sound as specific to that school? And if it doesn't make a difference, then you know that your essay needs to go a level deeper. So you talk about why you need an MBA, you give a little bit of context, you talk about why you need an MBA, and the most important part is you need to really explain why you need to step back from your career at this point and invest in building your professional toolkit, your perspective, your conceptual knowledge, and your network. And the important thing to remember is don't position this as a gap, but position it as an investment in yourself to solve larger problems. So I think a lot of times people will say, oh, I lack exposure to X kind of skill, Y kind of skill. I don't understand finance. I don't understand like negotiations. But what you need to do is really flip that narrative. Talk about the larger vision that you have and what are the skills that you need to really be effective in attaining that vision. So that's a more positive way of approaching this essay. For Tuck Essay 2, and I really want to now focus on Essay 2 because I'm keen to get to the live essay that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a sample and we're going to like analyze the feedback that I have for it. So Tuck Essay 2 is really about who you are. So when you talk about who you are, the school gives you a little bit of additional context. They want to understand your values and the experiences that have shaped your identity and character. And here's really a golden opportunity for you to talk about something that is really specific to you. And it's, some schools have it on the application form, but if it's on an essay, you get 300 words to really tell them what matters to you in a way. You're really going to spell out, what your sense of purpose is, how it's developed in your life, and what are the experiences or examples that you can provide to ensure that that messaging goes across as to why it's important to you. You then need to focus on tuck once more. You need to kind of bring that vision and that sense of purpose that you've developed so far to talk about how you understand tuck and its community. Like I mentioned, Tuck has a very close knit community, a very small community, and a community where you're really going to spend the 2 years on campus interacting with your cohort super extensively. Because even if you want to plan a trip, it's going to be at least a day away from the campus. So you'll find yourself spending a lot more time with your cohort rather than away from your cohort. So over here, what you need to think about is how self aware are you? So, if you link it back to the aware criteria, you want to talk about how you're adding value to the community that you're a part of based on your awareness of your strengths. So, really, that's what you're going to talk about. You're not focused only on making yourself vulnerable, but you're also going to talk about how your strengths make you the person that you are. So you need to talk about this essay with a personal story. You need to begin with a personal story that really bring home the message of what your values are and how they've shaped your identity. You then need to talk about very clearly what your values are at this point in time and give examples of how they have guided your actions and decisions. Again, given that you have word count, you can maybe give a personal example, you can give a professional example, but what you need to importantly indicate is how consistently you demonstrate this value throughout your life. Then you come to tuck because, again, in a 300 word essay, you need to devote a significant amount of that word count to tuck and your experience or your intended experience at tuck. So, again, the why tuck part, like how you're going to contribute to tuck's culture and community, needs to be at least half of this essay. And that's a good place to start. You need to then talk about how you're going to leverage these strengths of yours at tuck and demonstrate the awareness of like demonstrate an awareness that you also need to look at treating others with empathy, giving a voice to others, understanding others perspectives, because that is going to be a key part of how you interact with others in this very, very close knit community. Tuck's third essay is really, again, a time that you meaningfully contributed to someone else's sense of inclusion. So it's not only yourself that you're going to, you're going to talk about to the school, but you also want to tell the school how you understand again and, foster a sense of listening to others. How do you listen to others? How do you bring them into conversations? How do you ensure that they have the support they require to be the best possible person that they can be? And again, they're giving you a lot of freedom to talk about whether this is in a professional context or in a personal context. Does one matter more than the other? No. I've had clients who have spoken about supporting others at work, and I've had some who have spoken about helping kids at school, who have spoken about really going out of their way in their family to help someone or to help someone in their community. All these stories are impactful, but you have to remember that they are just the starting point. If you are going to talk about something that is really personal to you and meaningful to you, and talk about how you have helped someone, you need to lay out your story in a SCAR format, which is basically you lay out the situation, establish context, talk about the challenges that were inherent to fostering a sense of inclusion, talk about the actions that you took, and then talk about the result that came out of this action. Now, here's where I want to focus on providing more context. When you talk about a result, here is where you can really demonstrate continuity. Because if you're going to speak about something that is perhaps on the personal side, and maybe it's something that happened while you were in college, and now maybe you're 4 or 5 years away from that incident, right? So it's also an opportunity for you to talk about the immediate impact that you delivered at that point in time, but you can also talk of how you have learned from that particular instance and how you continue to demonstrate impact, or how you continue to foster a sense of inclusion in a meaningful way, even at this point in time. So you have scope to really build out that messaging. It's important to remember that the experience that you talk about needs to be something that has fundamentally defined how you interact with individuals. And that messaging needs to be very explicit in this essay. Before we move ahead and look at sample essays, I'd like to just talk about some things that you need to keep in mind. I think it goes without saying that regardless of the school that you're applying to, generic statements don't add value to your essay because they don't move the narrative forward. At any point for any essay that you attempt, you need to be able to move your essay forward with specific information. So, when you talk about why you are who you are, it's important to talk about specific circumstances that have influenced that. And that's something we're all very adept at doing. But then you need to be able to demonstrate the same level of specificity, whether you're talking about your goals, whether you're talking about contributions to the lives of others. Because if it is generic, you don't differentiate yourself and your thought process from maybe, hundreds of others who could be applying to the school at the same time as you. And what you need to remember is what is really unique and one in a million is the way you process information. Your experiences may be similar to others, the kind of growth you've seen might be similar to others, or you may have people who have even more impressive achievements. But what is truly yours is your value system and how you view the world and how you help others. I want to talk about a couple of essays now. And what I've done over here is I have highlighted certain parts of the essay because I want to focus on that when we talk about it. The first essay really answers the prompt: why are you pursuing an MBA? Why now? And how will Tuck contribute to achieving your goals and aspirations? Now, I think over here, what I want to focus on is I've highlighted in yellow the kind of key learning moments from the individual's experience up to this point in time. So the individual has gone into a great level of detail to describe their work, what they do, the kind of impact they have facilitated, and then they've also spoken about the kind of challenges they faced. But they've spoken about it in the sense of that this venture posed challenges and also tested my project and team management skills. And then, they've spoken about what they did to address that, to improve their skills, the kind of courses that they undertook. And then they realized the value of management studies in shaping effective leaders. Now, the first point of feedback that I'd want to give for this essay is I think one, the individual who's reading your essay at this point in time, the reader who's assigned this particular essay, will already have read your resume, then your application form, then they would have read the letters of recommendation. So by the time they come to your essay, they already have a pretty detailed understanding of your job role and the kind of work that you do. Um, so, what I would say is you can reduce the amount of word space that's currently allocated to describing the details of your role. What you do need to talk about is you can condense that to maybe about a sentence or so, but then talk about how you dealt with challenges, how you demonstrated a strategic approach, even at the point where you worked on these really complex responsibilities. But then you need to talk about what was the awareness that your role and the responsibilities that you undertook, what was the awareness of what you enjoy, what is it that you want to engage with professionally in the future, what are the kind of business problems that you want to solve. Currently, you have spelled out your goal, but what we need to understand is how is that goal related to a larger picture that you want to achieve. So when I look at how you have positioned your goals, I'm going to say to improve my skills I did this, but I realized that there was a value of management studies in shaping effective leaders. Now you have hinged the YMBA on developing leadership skills. A more effective way of thinking about this is maybe think of the larger business problems that you're solving and how an MBA is going to help you deal with these future aspirations of yours, or is going to help you with solutioning as you grow and as you deal with more and more complex responsibilities, of which team management might be one. When you think about an MBA, you really need to think about four hooks. And whenever you develop a why MBA, why now, you need to think about these four hooks. You need to think about how you want to improve your conceptual skills to deal with more complexity and scale. The second thing you need to think about is what are the sectors, or what is the sector that you want to be involved with post your MBA, and how are you going to deepen your understanding and your exposure to that sector. The third thing you need to think about is really about building a sense of community, because being an engaged community citizen is going to be an important part of the experience that you have at an MBA school. So think about what is it that you want to do in the future that involves building communities, whether that is professionally, whether that is outside of work. It will be a key part of how you view, your future. The fourth thing that you need to think about is really the network that you want to build and how that is going to be of use to you post your MBA. So when you lay out the why MBA and the why now, you really need to start building context in that direction. So put a little bit of word space about what is your role and how that has brought you to where you are. But then you need to think about really thinking of what are the business problems you want to engage in, and you articulate that there. And then you talk about therefore, what is your short term goal? And how is that short term goal a step on the journey towards your long term goal? At this point of time, your long term goal is, my ultimate vision is to bridge this gap. And you've given some context around the fact that there is a critical gap in India's semiconductor industry, and the industry almost wholly relies on imports, leading to extended lead times and increased project costs. But honestly, I would want to see a little bit of how you have formed this opinion in the context setting that you have done. So if you talk about how while you were on projects, you face certain challenges, and that really developed your curiosity and your ability to understand the larger impact of certain issues. And therefore you say that one of the things that I'm passionate about is I want to work on this problem. I want to ensure that my country has a certain ability, or you start planning out what are the action points that you would want to see in the future, and then you kind of build your short term goal and your long term goal accordingly. This will be a far more effective way to tell the admissions team what is it that you really want from an MBA. After that, you speak about the fact that after 6 years in the space tech industry with technical expertise and aspirations to transform the Indian semiconductor landscape, and MBA will be pivotal in my journey. Now, this is a sentence that doesn't really give me full context, because when I look at the previous paragraph, you've spoken about leadership in the context of leading a team, developing and being able to deliver a result. And then you talk about the project spoke about like revealed a critical gap. I would like to have more context setting around how this gap was revealed as a part of the project, and therefore, your curiosity and your thought process and your just your intellectual curiosity, honestly, to solve that problem. And why is it that you need an MBA to be able to resolve this issue? So, be giving a couple of sentences that answer that question. That why do you need an MBA in order to develop solutions? Why do you need an MBA in order to think about this problem in a particular manner? Have a sentence or two that articulate that. After that, you then talk of Tuck's rigorous curriculum will help me understand the intricacies of the global supply chain, business strategy, and data driven decision making. Now, while these are critical, these are critical skills that you need to develop as a leader. You do need to remember that these are skills that are important in any leadership role. And while Tuck will develop these for you, it is also necessary for you to think about the way in which Tuck will enable you to think about, like I said, the four hooks. So, how is it going to give you exposure and learning which is in line with the problem that you want to solve? And maybe that is the first thing that you need to emphasize. Um, Also, remember that telling Tuck that their rigorous curriculum, which they know is rigorous, is going to help you understand the intricacies of global supply chain, business strategy, and data driven decision making may not be sufficient to help them understand which of their resources is really going to help you. So, you need to devote some time to really demonstrating the depth of your research into TUC by talking about the courses that you are interested in, the clubs that will maybe foster your interest or further your interest. If there are any conferences or centers of excellence and they have specific resources or capstone projects, then you need to talk about that. TUC has a wealth of resources that in emerging technologies. They have a wealth of resources in terms of the way they are thinking about the application of technology to business problems, and demonstrating how that is going to be a key part of your learning journey will be far more specific and demonstrate the laser focus that you have and the depth of your interest in the school. I've highlighted in blue where you specifically talk about tough. So you, if you look at the amount of blue in this essay, it isn't really much. And I would want at least half of this essay to be purely about Tuck and its resources and specific resources. So I would say if I were to give one overwhelming or an overall piece of feedback about this essay, it is that you need to sharpen your messaging about what is important to you in your career, what is the direction that you want to take, and why is it so important for you to work on these business problems. What is the potential impact that you see of you being a part of solutioning towards this business problem. Schools will always appreciate specifics over a larger, broader view of a problem. Then the next half of your essay needs to be devoted to demonstrating how different elements or different resources at Tuck are going to build your perspective towards achieving your short and long term goals. And again, specifics are appreciated. So, if a particular class or the research done by a particular faculty member is going to increase your understanding of this particular problem, if there are classes that focus not only on specific leadership skills but also focus on deepening your contact and your understanding of the problems in a specific industry, those again will be far greater appreciated. Again, you also reference Tuck's renowned alumni network and close-knit community promise lasting connections, but that doesn't really give me any specific information about why that's so important to you as part of a learning experience. If you are able to demonstrate a single sentence where you talk about how certain resources or certain connections that you make are going to be important sources of mentorship for you. It's going to help you, have access to opportunities with startups in a specific area, or if it's going to give you internship opportunities, or if working with individuals or being connected with individuals who are in different parts of the world but working or connected by a passion to solve the problem that you want to work on. These are very meaningful connections that you want to demonstrate. So be more specific in why the intimate class size, the close knit community, the alumni network, again, are such important parts of the learning journey that you want to curate for yourself. Essay two is really about who you are. So again, it's an opportunity to talk about your self-awareness, your ability, your unique value system, and how you've demonstrated that in life. So I really like this story because there's a very strong personal story that this particular applicant has laid out. They've spoken about the fact that they are a product of resilience and determination. They've spoken about the circumstances that they've grown up in and the kind of observations they've had growing up. So whether that was a threat of violence in their region, whether that was looking at valuing certain resources or accesses in life, these are great elements to speak about because they will really define what you see as your priorities at a later stage in life. You've also spoken about securing admission, why education was so important to you, and how it gave you an insight into a world beyond your family and beyond what you had known thus far. The only point I would highlight at this place, and though this is a really, really strong story, is I would perhaps talk about a little specifics that were relevant to your particular circumstance. Maybe you got a different view because you had seen a lot of violence, and maybe having access to education not only built out your perspective by interacting with other individuals, but you can also demonstrate a little more maturity by talking of how access to education helped you see larger world problems. Maybe violence was one method that of solving problems politically that you had witnessed, but how did you develop an understanding of discourse, the value of discourse, of dialogue, of supporting individuals as opposed to having maybe a very uncomfortable situation with others. So I think this would be a better way for you to demonstrate the value system that you've carried forward and how there was a transformational moment in your life. But as far as an origin story is concerned, this is a very strong origin story. You have also spoken about how your experiences have given you a really deep passion for ensuring that access and inclusion is provided to communities that don't have such accesses, or do not have opportunities to engage with the world outside. And I think that is a really great way to talk about it. But again, I want to just step back and give some perspective, because you do need to remember that 300 words is a lot of word space. And there are two parts to this prompt. The first part of the prompt is talking about your own experience, your building of self awareness. The second part of the prompt is talking about how you're going to contribute to the tuck community. So again, a guide that I would have is the first part of the essay, or have about 150 words of this essay, talking about your personal journey and the evolution of your perspective. But you need to also work out that the part where you talk about how you're going to contribute to the tuck community needs to be a significant part of this essay. It needs to be at least half of the essay word count. So when I look at the way you've spelled it out, I would say that I've highlighted in blue the parts that specifically refer to tuck. And it's a good strategy, because if you're going to build your essay, you may want to just highlight how much word space you've devoted to tuck. Because in this case, I think there's a great opportunity for you to not only talk about having discourse and dialogue, but there's also story you can build about encouraging participation, about providing access and inclusion. And it would be a good point to go beyond clubs or student clubs to also talk about community outreach. Again, as a part of a very close knit community, tuck will offer you a lot of opportunities to engage with local communities, business owners, individuals who will really expand your worldview beyond your cohort. So think about including those elements as part of this essay. Where you talk about, I will bring a perspective rooted in resilience, compassion, and a commitment to promoting inclusive environments to tuck. That's a really powerful assertion. You need to back that up with at least two or three examples of ways in which you are going to add your perspective to the tuck community. And specifics, again, are always more appreciated over general statements. So there are different ways in which you can talk about it. I would not focus on technical expertise. I would focus on your value system and providing access.
Natasha, thank you. It's been very useful so far. Just wanted to remind you that we have about 13 minutes left.
Great. I'm going to just quickly talk about the last essay, which is about meaningfully contributing to someone else's sense of inclusion. So, in this particular case, you've built up your perspective on inclusion, about growing up without access. So, this is a great essay for you to continue that messaging. Now, this essay, I really feel, is well laid out. You've spoken about in a SCAR format. So, you've spoken about the situation, you've spoken about the challenges that you faced, you've spoken about actions that you've taken to consistently help someone, and you've also spoken about the outcomes of this. You've spoken about the outcomes for a specific individual. What I've done in this essay is I have highlighted with four different colors the four different elements. So the situation is outlined in yellow. The challenges you faced are outlined in green. You've had other elements in terms of the actions you've taken, which are highlighted in blue, and then the outcome is highlighted in gray. I would say that if you look at the way your challenges and your actions are laid out, it's kind of intertwined, where some elements of your actioning are mentioned because there are two stages to the story. I would say that if I were to give feedback, and again, my feedback for this particular essay is minimal, because I think it's really well laid out and it's a great example. I would perhaps just focus on setting the picture in terms of the challenges you faced, with a headline statement. I would perhaps say that there were two stages to this. Like when I tried to help, I came up against challenges at different stages of reaching out to this individual. So you can say that first, these were the challenges that I faced. I helped him by addressing it in this manner. But then there was a second stage of challenges when the individual kind of moved away or ran away, and you had to again bring him back. So I think in this particular essay, I would focus on headlining more effectively, because it will be able to, you'll then be able to direct the reader in a far more efficient manner in terms of how you want them to interpret the essay. The last piece I will say is that while the immediate outcome of this essay is very obvious, very immediate, and very specific to the individual you are helping, you can, I think, make some um, you can make some space to talk about how this particular incident shaped your perspective of what is important. if it is important to go out of your comfort zone and to help individuals, or if it is a more relevant way of looking at this is that when you look to help someone, you need to remember that it is a long commitment. It is not enough to merely speak to someone and understand how they are, but it's really about putting yourself out there and making yourself available to them. So, with that, I think I have come to the end of the feedback that I wanted to give. And I think now, Sreyashi, we can look at questions.
Perfect. Yes. And Natasha also wanted to tell you there's 10 minutes left, but we can end a couple minutes early because you will also be with the audience at the next session.
That's cool. So we'll try and make space for as many questions as we can. And like Sreyashi mentioned, there is a Google form that we have included. You can put your details over there, and we can reach out to you, to have a more detailed conversation. If your aim is to kind of discuss your goals or elements which are very specific to your profile, we may not have the time to address all of that over here. So you can reach out to us again after the session. So I think let me look at a couple of these questions. So I'll just pick up one at random. Can you quote any example for the second essay phrase, how your background contributes to the diverse duck community? Should it be personal experiences or professional? Hmm. When you talk about how your background contributes to the diverse duck community, I think the example that I would give is, if you're going to talk about, and let's talk about the example from the live essay that we looked at. This is someone who's grown up with resilience and perseverance. They understand the values of that, and they perhaps would want to talk about. They want to carry that messaging forward in terms of how they're going to contribute to the diverse duck community. You can think about then this individual acting as a mentor because they realize the value of having consistent engagement and support in order to overcome sometimes overwhelming circumstances. They may want to become a mentor in clubs that maybe help individuals with mental health issues. They may want to help children who are from disadvantaged backgrounds really have access to certain educational resources. So, you need to kind of talk about specifics in your background story that you want to apply because you realize the value of overcoming them or you realize the value of engaging with them. I've worked with individuals who have spoken about the challenge of being part of a multi-generational family where resources were scarce and children were many. I've had individuals who have spoken about really having sports as a very key part of their growing up years. And then they talk about how they want to bring that understanding of nutrition and fitness to specific clubs or to specific initiatives at TUP. So it's really about bringing the personal and the specific, and they need to really be true to you and how you view the world. Um, Another one,
Natasha, I'm
yeah,
sorry, before the next one, um, just we have another couple more minutes remaining since you will have to kind of do a little, backstage check before the next session as
yes,
well. Okay, yeah.
yes. So I think there are a couple of questions around profiles. So for all these individuals, I think reaching out to us would be really great. So I think there are questions around age and experience and how that makes them viable candidates. All of these can be addressed to us specifically. There's one thing that I want to mention is mentioning the names of current students appreciated. It's not about name dropping, but if you want to mention a student or someone that you spoke to because they gave you something really valuable as an insight, you can do that. And again, it will demonstrate that you've gone beyond the website and you really made the effort to engage with individuals. And for TUC, that is really important. So if you have someone who's given you meaningful advice, then mention the individual and mention the advice that they gave you. So I think, Shreyashi, that would answer some of the specific essay-based questions.
Yeah.
And like I said, there is a link, there is a QR code. You can reach out to us and you can take these questions further, but fill up the form link that we have placed, everyone, and reach out to us for more specific advice. I think that would be the best way for me to leave this session.
Thank you, Natasha, for such a helpful session, and thank you to the audience for being engaged with us.
Great. See you, Shreyashi.